Hi, everybody. My name is Joe Testa. I am the VP of Arts Relations for the Zildjian Company. Very excited about today. From what we can tell, the success of Zildjian Live has been well articulated by you, and we're excited about that. And people have been asking for more and more. So we thought it might be fun to dig into a few performances a bit more, but in conjunction with one artist interviewing another artist. Um, so we thought we'd do a few of these, and we're going to start out with the first pairing. We're going to take Stanton Moore and Soan, and we're going to have Ash interview Stanton about his performance. We thought that would be a lot of fun, and so Ash and myself will interview Stanton. It's going to be mostly Ash, and try to dig into his thinking, his processing of playing, what he's playing, how he's playing it, et cetera, et cetera. And we're hoping that people will not only be able to enjoy the performance of Stanton that you've already watched or witnessed, but also now understand a little bit more and actually be educated a little bit about how he played it and why he chose what he played, and et cetera, et cetera. So with that, a little bit of a setup, let's dive right in, and let's watch a little snippet of Stanton's performance from Zildjian Live 2020. And then we'll dive in, we'll bring Ash on and Stanton on, and we'll get busy. All right, thanks. Wow, that was awesome. That was a nice little sample of Stanton ripping it up a little bit there at Zildjian Live. And so I just wanted to formally welcome both Stanton Moore, live from New Orleans right now, and Mr. Ash Soan, live from England. Very excited to have both of you guys. It's an honor and privilege, obviously, for us, or for me personally, but us as a company. Kind of excited about this because we're going to take, two bros and have you guys kind of talk about each other's performances and dig a little deep into your grooves and how to play them. So we'll start with Stanton, but we're going to have Ash. Let's have Ash start interviewing Stanton a little bit here and get into it a little bit. So Ash, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you roll, baby.
Thank you, Joe. Hello, everyone. So Stant, what a performance that was, man.
And thank you, brother.
I know we all, on the day, we were all of us, doesn't really matter how experienced you are as a musician. When you're playing in front of that many drummers and it's under the microscope like that, it's really tough the skill of tapping straight into the sort of juicy part of your playing. And everybody on the day did it, and it's an absolute skill that as soon as you hit the ground, you're grooving. And you proved it there in bundles. You just get a little bit of a warm up with the band, and then you're on. All the cameras are rolling, and we're recording. How did you feel? I felt relatively nervous when I played, but as soon as you start playing, that sort of dissipates. How do you feel?
Well, as you say, it is a pretty nerve-wracking position to be in, because it's like, wow. I mean, this is like it. This is like the best of the best drummers on the roster. some of the best drummers in the world hanging out. You're with the biggest, most well-known, best cymbal company, and they believe in you. So, and you've been invited here, so it's time to deliver and go. So I made a point. I literally looked myself in the mirror before I got in an Uber and came over to the filming to when it was my time. And I looked at myself and said, man, just go in there and have fun. It's like, you've done as much prep as you can. You are who you are. Just go in there, do what you do, and have as much fun as possible. Yeah. Because it can be easy to forget about that. That you're like, oh, I want to be good. I want to give a good performance, and oh, this isn't right. That's not right. It's like, don't focus on that. Just focus on, oh man, this is incredible. I'm so honored to be here. And you and I were developing our friendship, and we had a lot to talk about. So it's like, man, I'm psyched to be here, hanging with my buddy Ash, and to be a part of this Zildjian family. So while I was playing, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous, but I was trying to let the predominant emotion be joy and excitement, and trying to exude that to the listeners and the watchers and the band, and make sure that they're having fun too, because it's a really long day for them. So I just came out, and I've played so many festivals and gigs now where it's like, okay, you've got 30 minutes to set up, and now go, and you're playing in front of 20,000, 50,000 people, and it's 1, 2, 3, boom, and you've got to be on. So to be on, like from note one, I'm used to doing that, So it was like, all right, here you go. Here's your time slot. Here's your chance.
Absolutely, man. I mean, well, I think you've completely 100% succeeded in that. You sounded, up until that point, I'd met you at PASIC just the year before. And so you're right, we're sort of in the beginning of our sort of friendship, but I'd seen you play, and that was a pure version of Stanton that came out that when you hit the floor. I mean, it's fantastic.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you saying that. And I mean, I hope I'm not saying too much when it meant the world to me when, as soon as it went live and it went out into the world, you called me and you left me a voice, a little voice message, and man, I listened to it a couple of times, and just the excitement in your voice and the support, meant the world to me, and because you and I, we were there together. It's a shared experience,
Well, Stanton, one of the things you said there, I think the key thing was have fun, right? Yeah. And the song you chose is a lot of fun. I mean, it's New Orleans, man. It's good times, And could you give us a little rundown of why you chose the tune you did, or it's kind of a combination, right, of a couple of things?
Yeah. So, as Ash just said, I wanted to give a representation of who I am musically, which is, a lot of people know me for my funk drumming with Galactic and my groove drumming with a bunch of other bands, but I also have a piano trio. I love playing brushes. I love playing odd time signatures, but a lot of people haven't seen me really do that. I was one of, or I think I was the last artist to be added to the roster. So I talked to Sput, and he's like, man, if you've got an idea for something, that would be great. Because I think Sput was, I think he was writing the material for some of the people. Some of the people came in with their own material, and maybe he rearranged it, and he did do an arrangement on this. So I was like, man, I want to play something that people may expect me to do, but I also want to throw a curveball and do something that people wouldn't expect me to do. And then, you know, maybe do a little bit more of something they might want to hear from me. So that first tune is a tune that I wrote years ago, maybe in the late 90s, and it's called Sprung Monkey, just a funny little title. And I had recently come up with a fun sticking, and so I put that groove to this song, Sprung Monkey. And I had the idea that, because we wanted to do it all to a click so that, you know, it could be edited if need be or anything like that. So it's like, we could do Sprung Monkey to an 8th note click with no downbeats, and then we could go into the changes of James Black's Magnolia Triangle, which is a tune in 5/4 or 5/8, and the 8th notes could stay the same, and we could get into 5, and it has some fun hits, and we didn't play the melody on it. I just wanted to, you know, solo and play over that tune, and then go into another tune that is off of one of my other records, and that's a tune that Robert Walter wrote, and I contributed to that a little bit. I think I wrote a bridge in there. So it was kind of a medley of 3 tunes that I was like, well, you know, you're not going to get this opportunity every day to be on a platform that'll reach this many people, and I really wanted to show a wide representation of all the things that I love to do and play. You know, usually when I'm playing in 5 like that, I'm like in a suit and playing smaller bop-sized drums and playing with an acoustic piano. But in this instance, you know, I was going from one funk thing to another, so I was playing a lot of that same vocabulary, but just throwing harder, hitting harder. And, you know, most of my vocabulary is, I try to adapt it so that it would work either in a jazz swinging out context or a funk context. So even though I was playing in 5, I was playing it more like I would with the approach of if I was playing in a funk situation.
And let's not miss the fact that you sounded like 5 people when you started that groove. It's like you sounded like all of Trouble Funk, playing an amazing groove, which we're going to get into a bit later. But you know, as soon as you started playing that stuff with your left over on the left-hand side, you know, the audience were like, "What? Hang on a minute! Is it the percussionist in Sput's band that's creating this, or what's going on?"
Well, we do have to give credit to Nate Worth. I mean,
yeah,
what an incredible percussionist, and he was a joy to play with. So it's coming from a real simple sticking of left, left, right, left, right, left, right, right. So Nick, do you mind giving me the overhead? Now, I don't consider myself an expert in go-go. I don't consider myself a go-go drummer, but I love it, and I hear a lot of similarities between go-go and some of the New Orleans stuff. So I do draw influence from it, and I draw inspiration from it. So you mentioned Trouble Funk. I inadvertently started putting a bass drum pattern that is very common in go-go music. So I'm gonna pick up this tempo and then add that bass drum pattern. And then Ash, what makes it sound like more than one person is that I take and I add to that what I call a Garibaldization, which is where I borrow from one of our favorite drummers, David Garibaldi, and he would take any right, right, left, right, right, left stickings, and he would turn them into a Swiss triplet, right? So now I'm going to add, you know, for anybody unfamiliar with the Swiss triplet, you take right, right, left, right, right, left, and you put a flam on front of it. So anytime a right, right, left happens, I'm going to turn it into a flam, but it's going to be a double stop because it's between two voices, right? So
Yeah.
first I'll start with the sticking, then I'll add the flams.
Mega.
And then, you know, it's those, just by adding those flams and then creating that into Swiss triplets, it starts to make it sound like the two hands are playing two different rhythms. And then I started splitting it up. David Garibaldi plays it between the hi-hat and the snare. But I was like, oh, what would it sound like if I put my left hand over here or here or here? And over the years, I've come to discover that there's a whole lot of real estate over here. Nick, give me that overhead. Most drummers, they think, okay, here's my area, right? And then they forget about the left hand. It's like, oh, but look at all this free real estate over here that you can do stuff with. So over the years, I've taken that sticking and other stickings and figured out what I can do with it over here and make it sound like more than one person, because in the situations that I play with, I'm usually the only drummer, but I love percussion and I love adding new textures into the kit. So
Stan, another thing that you do so well, and Ash does this too, is you have that a little half swing thing going on.
oh
That
yeah,
just gives it that juice, you know. Can you dive into that a bit?
1,000,000%. So it's playing with the notion that you're in between straight and you're in between swing. And all of my favorite groove drummers have a very natural way of doing that. Guys like Clyde Stubblefield and Jabo Starks from James Brown, Bernard Purdy, John Bonham. And keep in mind, all these guys grew up. I think that Zigaboo Modelis and John Bonham were both born in 1948. So at the time, between then and the late 50s, most music that you heard on the radio, whether it was Fats Domino, Louis Prima, or starting to get into Little Richard, Chuck Berry, all that music was still based in a swing pulse. We didn't start straightening stuff out until the late 50s and the 60s. So by the time the 60s came around, John Bonham and Zigaboo Modelis and Clyde Stubblefield, Jabo Starks, they had already heard a lot of swung music. So when they start trying to play 16th notes, they had heard so much swung music growing up that they had a natural lilt in their playing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play straight 16th notes for a second, and then I'm going to morph it intentionally. And the right hand will be playing straight 8th notes. The left hand is going to be doing the morphing, and I'm going to get into in between. Then I'm going to go all the way to swing, to flams, and all the way back. But this is how you can work on this to develop it, right? Now, Joe, I can apply that to that same sticking. I'm going to just do the simple sticking. Left, left, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, left, right, right. And I'm going to start it off straight, two straight. Then I'm going to get in between. then I'm going to make it to where it's 2 swing. And Ash, I hope that it makes you laugh. So when it's 2 swing, it just sounds kind of corny to me. And then the trick is to learn where in between is you personally, and where it feels good, and where it feels good for the given musical context at hand, right? And it came from growing up and trying to sound like some of my favorite groove drummers, and then I would record myself at a gig and listen back and be like, oh man, that's not quite it. Like, I'm swinging too much, right? And then I would have to go back and say, I've got to straighten it out a little bit. And it was a gradual process of dialing it in, but then now I apply it to everything that I do. And so for example, Joe, since you bring it up, I mean, like go-go is slower and swung more. And Ash is great at playing this kind of stuff. So what I think of when I play go-go now is I'm feeling the pulse of the halftime shuffle. Whereas when I was younger, I was always feeling that in-between straight and swing. But now when I play go-go and try to make it sound more accurate, then I got to slow it down and swing it more, right? But the way that you swing something can make it either closer to one style,
Yeah.
or if you straighten it out, it could make it closer to a different style. And thank you for bringing that up, Joe. It is something that I've worked on, and Ash, I can imagine it's something that you've worked on too. I mean, your halftime shuffle is like, I mean, it's one of the greats. You're one of the best halftime shuffle players that I've heard, and that is a challenging feel to develop.
Sure. I mean, it's something that I've always played that groove. I've always, we were talking about Picaro the other day about the book that's out, and Picaro, very different. I didn't grow up in New Orleans, so the influence, the sort of swing influence which you've had on your life must have been every bar you walk past, you're hearing and feeling that music. In Shropshire in England, not so much. So I had to, I had to seek it out, and I found the halftime, Purdy and the halftime shuffle was the thing that I found first, and I spent a lot of time on figuring that out. And then as I got older, I realised that it is connected to all of the other grooves, go-go and rock and roll and everything else. If you think about Bonham did a fantastic halftime shuffle, but he's a great rock and roll drummer, full stop. It's all connected. So I'm glad by accident I found that groove first, that halftime shuffle thing, when I was 14, because it's the centre of it all. And I just lucked out, There's some of those fills actually, Stanton. You did one there, where those really, I call them like sort of flurry fills. Actually, I'd love to get into that. Yeah, the sort of flammy flurry fills I don't know what's going on with that.
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. So with that, what I'm doing is a flam accent, right? Flam accent, as a refresher for anybody who need it, is hand-to-hand triplets with flams on the front. But then I play the flam accent a lot just off the left hand. And it works because the grace note in the right and in the accent, that's right, left, and then right, left. I can morph it and show you how this is actually right, left, right, left, right, left. So I love turning things into a 3-note phrase. So I'm going to play that left-handed flam accent, then I'm just going to play sextuplets, and I'm going to pick it up in tempo a little bit. Right? Now, I'll do that around the drums, and I'm doing it real, this is pretty clean. Right? But what I'll do is then I'll stick in a foot, right? Okay, but then I'll go to the double pedal, or I'll do it single pedal too, but in that case, just then I went to the double pedal and then I added 2 notes on the feet. And I'm trying to make it like a scoop. And then when I move it to the toms, then I open them up. I open up the flam. Then you can get into fun stuff where you can do things like this. Right? So, just to use it in context,
Did you think that up like ahead of time, or you just kind of did it once and then back engineered it? Like, was it something that just kind of happened and you're like, oh, that's cool, and then figured out what you did, or did you actually write it out and then learn how to do it?
You know, just touring for as long as I have been and being on a bus 6 nights a week and, you know, playing 6 nights a week, you start to come up with a fill and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that was cool. Like, what else can I do to that to make it cool? So at a lot of the tempos we play, I would want to come up with like Herta-ish sounding fills, right? So, but I like 3-note phrases. So instead of doing this, which is a wide open Herta, right? It's like, that's cool, but how can I make it sound more like Philly Joe or Elvin and make it into a 3-note phrase? And then that's cool, but then how do I, like if I wanted to come up, how would I do it up? And I just add a foot. And oh, if you can add 1 foot, why not add 2? And what I'm going for, though, is I'm trying to sound like, A, what the heck was that? And B, trying to make it sound like, you know, for ages people have tried to sound like sneakers in a dryer. Well, oftentimes I'm trying to sound like an elephant falling up the stairs.
Oh man! Well, I tell you what, I love it, Stanton, and it's one of those feels. When you did it on the day, I remember thinking straight away, what is that? Because it you know, and I'm really glad you explained it, because now I'm going to go away and practice it myself.
I love it. I love it.
And there were a couple moments where it's like, he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. And then you make it. It's so much tension.
Well, I thought it's just an improvised fill. He's gone for something, and the sticking's not going to work out, but clearly it does. You know,
well, it's coming from playing so much, and then Joe, just to go back to your question, like I'll come up with it gradually, you know, adding to it night after night, and then literally coming back off the gig, sitting on the bus, and then writing it out and figuring it out. Oh, what is it? Oh, I can trace it back to a left-handed flam accent and sextuplets. And then substitute the last note with a foot, substitute the last note with 2 feet. And then, as I like to do, I like to stretch rhythms, right? So I'm taking it and I'm turning it, that first flam accent, turning it into an open herta.
Yeah.
And then you throw the feet in there and make it sound like a cascade upwards.
Exactly. The other thing, Stanton, I'd love to ask you about is the 5/8, 5/4 section.
Yeah.
And did you have any things sort of prepared if it was going to feel like it's going to go off the rails? Have you got any ideas that you use when you're playing in odd time that will get you out of trouble? Basically.
Yeah, that's a good question. So that song, Magnolia Triangle, which we were just playing over the changes and the harmonic structure and the hits, and that's a tune written by the great James Black, a New Orleans legendary drummer and composer. So I've played that. You know, I have a weekly gig on Tuesday nights at Snug Harbor with my piano trio for like the last 7 or 8 years, and I try to make a point to play that tune each gig. You know, we have 2 sets, so at least first set or second set, so that I have been developing my vocabulary on that kind of stuff, right? So what I'm feeling when I'm playing in 5/4 or 5/8, however you want to call it, I'm feeling a rhythmic structure that's either bong gosh gong gosh gosh gong, which is this one that we played over, which is more syncopated. So you're gonna bong stand bong gosh. So a common one is to think of take 5, right? Bong gang gang gong gong gang gang. So that would sound something like this. But the James Black rhythmic structure is bong gang bong gang gong. It's more syncopated. There's all kinds of things that I started thinking about. I started realizing that, oh wait, if you play 4/3 and then 3/2 in the 3/2 in the 5, so play 4/3 in the 3 part and then 3/2 in the 2 part, it sounds like 7/5.
Fantastic.
But it comes from years and years and years of doing it. It's not like I'm trying to get mathematical on it. It's like, oh, what can I do with this musically, right? And so I've over time worked out vocabulary. And you know, one of the things that I did that I've seen some comments on is I'll go into you know, eighth notes or 16th notes with the left hand, and then come down for backbeats to make it sound like we just went into 4/4, right? So. All right, now, admittedly, Ash, right there, I extended it until I just let go of like where the 5 was, right?
Yeah.
But because the eighth notes are going, if you've got a good band, they'll keep playing the vamp. And then I just listen to the vamp, right?
Yeah.
And then make sure that I don't lose it. But I'm not counting, I'm listening to the band. And I'm not losing it, but I'm listening to that for my reference. So that's how I don't get lost, is that I'm acutely listening to them.
And also hoping that the band are good enough that if you start going off piste, that they won't follow you. They'll stick to where they are. And that, you know, you've got to give that band a shout out.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
What a band.
And yeah, and that's the thing, is that, you know, I tried that out like in sound check, and I was like, and I knew, but I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna be fine. Like, it's gonna be just fine. Yeah. So I had full confidence, because what an incredible band. So I just knew that that I'd be able to do that and be able to listen to them and work it out. If I had to count it, we
Stanton,
could. But
in the 5/4 thing, you said you played a little different stylistically with the trio versus with Zildjian Live.
right.
How do you mean? And how do you not, like, you guys are pros, so this is why you do this. But for people like me who have no idea, if I were able to establish the 5/4 thing, I would do the same thing over and over again, because I just wouldn't be able to change it up. How do you guys do that?
Okay, so for one thing, I playing in 5 with my trio, I would play traditional grip. I would be playing drums that were tuned higher and more open, and I would also play with an angle to where my traditional grip was higher, so that the smaller notes were quieter. So check it out. So Joe, I tried to show you how I would start off in a more piano trio, lighter setting, and then I started switching over to match grip, went to the bell with a cymbal, came over to all this stuff, and played things that if I would do all that in a piano trio, I might get fired. Except for it's my piano trio, but but hopefully that demonstrated. And then, you know, too, I mean, I love playing with brushes, right? So I've learned over time how I can play all this stuff with brushes too. So I would do all this with my piano trio, and make a point to be able to play what I want with brushes. So. And then too, you know, Joe, one of my favorite things to do, since we're talking about it, is I might ride on this lunar crash. But it's all in 5, but it's like, yeah, what if I want to sound like Mardi Gras Indians in 5? So I just, over time, learn how to utilize what vocabulary I have in what musical contexts I might find myself in. So if I was playing 5 with more of a heavy hitting funk band, I'm going to go more into my funk approach sonically and texturally and dynamically, but I might be drawing from more of my swinging out jazz vocabulary.
And Stanton, what's fantastic, of course, today, the guys that are watching will be able to see that the transcription's there. So some of the stuff that you've played will be there. Well, the stuff that you played on Zildjian Live, obviously, which is some of the stuff that you've demonstrated, will be available as a transcription, and people could actually see what you're doing, which is great. They can start to dissect what's going on in your head.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you. You know, this is fun for me to do, and we'll get into your segment in a minute, but it was super fun for me to watch everything that you were doing on that as well. And I think that's a great tool, a great element that Zildjian offers up when they do these Zildjian Lives, is that there is the transcription.
Mine will be about 3 minutes because I played one groove and then a fill that didn't have much involved. But it's been it's been great dissecting what you did, because there's so much on the day and from the performance that I'm really glad we did this, to be able to go in with a bit more of a sort of a microscopic look at what you're doing. It's been really great.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess if you really wanted to dig even deeper into your brain, you could probably find a lot more on your academy, right?
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah.
Figured.
Drum Academy. Thanks for the layup, and then I'm gonna tee it off. Yeah, StantonMooreDrumAcademy.com. A lot of what I do, I film it and I write out transcriptions. PDFs and all that. So anybody who's interested in my approach to drumming or explaining or teaching, I've been filming a lot and doing a lot, especially during these times. Just released a 5-lesson course on shuffles. So thank you for mentioning it, Joe. And yeah, anybody who wants to check that out, I would love for you to come check it out.
All right, guys, thank you. I really appreciate you spending the time doing this. It's a lot of fun to have the interaction between two pros like yourselves, and you guys just hit it off like instantly when you met, and it was just an obvious choice to have the two of you guys together. And it's going to be great to see other ones that we're going to do, especially yours, Ash, and flipping having it, the seats
other
flip,
way,
that's
yeah.
going to be cool. And I just want to remind people out there that if you go to Zildjian.com, you can get all the learn the music videos that are focused on each of these guys' performances. And what's great about it is, in the learn the music, it's they'll slow the speed up. So like I think it's 50%, 70%, and 90%. So you get to see a slow gradual up to real time speed to really see the breakdown of each of the grooves that these guys are playing, which is just amazing to see it in that way. And it really helps with the learning process. And there's also downloadable PDF transcriptions, and there's additional video interviews with like Stanton and Ash. I think Mike Dolbear's doing some of those interviews, which is really cool. And if you become like a Z Club member, you get a lot of limited special featured stuff, like deals on cymbals and sticks and apparel and things like that. So just wanted to give that a little plug, because I think for those of you who are doing deep dives, there's a lot of good content for you to check out. So until next time, thank you very much, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this.
Loved
Thank
it.
you. Yes, indeed.